All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Michaud with Trimble, and today I'm joined by our guest, Farrah Etcheverry, aka the Lady Land Surveyor. Really excited to chat with her today about women in surveying, especially because it's International Women's Day coming up this week. So, Farrah, so nice to have you join us today.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Great. Yeah. And so, Farrah, like you are working as a land surveyor or are studying. I heard you just came from a test today. Are you getting ready for testing or articling, or where are you at in your career?
So, still studying.
Yeah.
I've been working under a registered land surveyor for quite a few years now, but I just recently decided to go ahead and go the academic route. So, I am currently enrolled at East Tennessee State University getting a bachelor's degree in surveying and mapping. So, I had an exam this morning for one of my survey law classes.
Awesome. Yeah. So, are you reviewing law and historical research? I saw one of your posts. You often have a lot of pre-work as part of your job. Is that true?
Yes. Yep. That's very true. And we do all of it ourselves here. So we are a really small crew at Etcheverry Land Surveying. It's really just me, my dad. We have one field guy and another draftswoman. So all of that heavy lifting in the research department falls on all of us for sure.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Yeah, tell me about so you started surveying at a young age, from what I gather. So tell me about your journey to this career path.
Sure. Kind of a fun one. I didn't have a major clue what my dad did as I was growing up. I just kind of knew he made maps.
Yeah.
And occasionally he would ask me to carry really heavy buckets, like 5-gallon buckets of equipment to go out and lay out our soccer fields. So he used to coach my soccer teams, and being the precise measurer, he was the guy that was laying out our soccer fields all the time. So I used to go with him to help. That was kind of my first introduction to it. So I can't say it was a great one when I was a young kid. I didn't like that very much. But when I got a little bit older, and to be honest, I had kids really young, and I really wanted to have a career that I could have a flexible schedule.
Mhm.
And so, of course, I reached out to my dad and I said, hey, do you need somebody just in the office? Figured I would maybe do some of his secretarial work. I could answer phones, I could do billing, things like that. But I quickly realized how much I enjoyed drafting. And very shortly after I started, we got into drones, which was a huge thrill for me. It's one of my favorite parts of what we do now. And it all just kind of tumbled down from there. I started staying late nights working with my dad, doing more in-depth studying, learning how to draft, and just kind of learning some of the office techniques. Then we started going out in the field together, and he and I just have a ball. So it was a few years into that we decided to go ahead and he had been operating the business as a partnership for a while with a few other people that were no longer really active in the company. So we decided to kind of rebrand and change it into an LLC. We did that, gosh, 2 or 3 years ago now, and so that's where we are at.
That's amazing. What a great story. And I'm sure those soccer fields were very precise, but
They were perfect.
perfect. Yeah. That's great. And I know that so you are also an advocate for get kids into survey as well. So
Yes.
given your experience, I'm sure you have other ideas on how to get other people into the profession, not just kids, but also other diverse workforce into surveying. And can you talk about some of your advocacy work there?
Sure. I absolutely love the Get Kids into Survey team.
Mm-hmm.
They really do all of the footwork. They create all the product, and it's amazing. And they do all of their cartoons and everything in house. And so they really just kind of needed some people to just get it out there. So I really give them a lot of the credit. They're coming up with all of the content, and then they are looking for professionals to just share it with people.
Mm-hmm.
So my biggest form of advocacy really has kind of taken root online.
Yeah.
Being a mom and a student and somebody working full time, I don't have a ton of time to go into the school systems right now and have talks and things like that. But I try really hard online to curate my own content in a way that's positive, that shows both the good and the bad parts of what we do, but really to just kind of bring people in, let people know that it's not. I think historically people look at surveying as a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of pounding rebars and being outside in thorn bushes all the time. And that's just not the entirety of what it is. So I've tried to kind of hone in on that and just kind of let women and younger people know that it's a really lucrative career option, and it's not as sort of physical as it has been historically, at least not anymore.
Sure. Yeah. And that's a great point. And I think like you're doing a great job through your online presence. I love to see your posts and you know, I think what is important is like showing the realism of what a day in a life is. And I know like you had mentioned that you're looking at creating more content kind of on
Yes.
video content to showcase that. Do you have some like good day in the life stories that you might want to share with us today?
I've got a couple. I mean, over the last year or so, my field time has been cut pretty dramatically just because of how busy I am in the office and in my personal life. But a typical day, if I'm coming into work, looks very busy. Like I said, I'm a mom of 3, so my mornings are kind of consumed with getting kiddos ready for the day and making breakfast and all of those normal parent things. I come into the office, I kind of go over what we're doing for the day. I'm checking my emails, I'm returning phone calls, I'm doing all of that administrative work and kind of like counting down the moments to where we get to go outside, because I'm doing that less frequently now. So some of the favorite things that we do are definitely some of our bigger drone topos. I just absolutely love to fly, and I love to process all of our photogrammetry. So a huge part of what I do and what my day would look like would be going out into the field, collecting all of the data, getting it back into the office, and starting to work with it to create the deliverable, which is, of course, the best part. Yeah. So I'm planning on sharing some more in-depth videos. I think I mentioned in the post that you're referring to that it's a new thing for me, trying to let my dad film me, or whoever's with me is there watching, and it's kind of different. But we're stepping outside of that box to try and hopefully show a little bit more of what it looks like out in the field for me, at least, for women, I think a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, what would you say has been kind of for you as a woman, like some of the challenges you've overcome getting into the industry? I mean, I know you speak a lot about resilience. Like what does that kind of mean to you and your career getting into this field?
Sure. It's a great question. I think I speak so much about resilience because as women trying to get involved, whether it's in land surveying or construction in general, a lot of the STEM fields, they are male dominated. We're starting to see a shift in that, but there's a lot of beatdown that sometimes happens before we as women are kind of raised up and held to the same esteem that some of the men are. For me, that has been a lot of if we're out on site, my dad or even our other male field guy is the first person that somebody will go to if they have a question. Right. I could be the one carrying the rod, holding the data collector, the field book is in my pocket, I'm kind of in charge for the day, but I'm typically not the first one that's approached. So it can be things like that, or it can be things all the way to sort of the more gross extreme of I've had in front of my dad and our other field guy, I've had men come up to me and actually come up to my dad and almost solicit my help for other projects that have nothing to do with what we're doing. I've had somebody say that if my dad brought me around more often, that they would give him more work. So there's things like that are just, they're very demeaning. And so when I say we need to be resilient, it literally means pick yourself up and remind yourself every single day that those things don't determine your worth out in the field, and they don't have bearing on your actual knowledge or ability to do what you do. Because sometimes that's how it starts to feel, is like all you're good for out there is to be a pretty face and nobody notices your brain. So that's what I mean by that when I say it. It's kind of hard to get in there. I think a lot of times once a person does, especially once a woman does finally find a crack to get into, then things start to change. But until that point, it's definitely kind of hard to climb the ladder.
Yeah, absolutely. I can understand and appreciate that perspective as well. I had the same, experience where, you show up on site and immediately you are having to prove your credibility. So you're immediately
Right.
having to show up and, demonstrate your ability to be there on site. And so I think that is something our male colleagues maybe don't appreciate, the challenge of having to prove yourself and your ability
Right.
every time you step outside into the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. Do you have, so you mentioned that you enjoy working with drones and creating the deliverables from that. Any other kind of favorite technology you're currently
Yes.
geeking with?
I would love to say yes. We're looking into maybe expanding the drone operation a little bit. So maybe getting something a little bit bigger, something a little bit more substantial. Right now we're running a DJI Phantom 4 Pro, which I love. It's a great compact drone, but we might want to invest in something bigger. And then we're also in the market, at least, for a new robotic total station. So I don't have a ton of new tech in the office, but I certainly keep up to date, and I like to look at what's out there and kind of start to analyze and see for myself the types of things I want to start working with. Coming into the company with my dad as the guy, I use his stuff. So the closer and closer that I get to licensure and kind of that professional independence, the more and more I start looking at the gear that I really want to run one day. So
For sure.
I don't have anything that I'm playing with right now, but I'm definitely looking.
Awesome. Yeah, and there's always like new things. Do you find it hard to stay on top of all this stuff, given that, I mean, you're a busy lady, right? So staying on top of all the trends, is there a particular trend you're looking at or see as new?
Not necessarily, but it is definitely hard to stay on top of the trends. But it is something that I think is a good thing that my dad and his example has kind of taught me, is that you don't have to have the newest stuff to be really good at what you do. There was a few years ago, shortly after I started my Instagram, that I had a bunch of comments after a bigger page had shared one of my photos, and we were using an older Leica GPS unit. And I got so much hate on that picture because it was like, oh, well, maybe for your birthday, you should, update your gear, and just a lot of comments like that. And while the temptation, I think, for all of us is there, especially because most surveyors are kind of nerdy, like we just kind of like that stuff.
Yeah.
And we want the new stuff. It's always tempting. But I think it's more important to realize that your methods for what you do are more important than having the shiny new stuff. So no trends that I'm like necessarily following and trying to keep up with, other than trying to figure out how to make these reels now on Instagram, because that's what's popular.
Yeah.
But yeah, just more being thankful that we have good equipment to use, and trying to get the most bang for our buck from it.
Definitely. Yeah, that nothing replaces pragmatism, right? When it comes to
right.
It's got to work and work all day, regardless of the conditions. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Speaking of conditions, so you are based in Arizona, but you also serve
Right.
a couple of different states. How is it working in the desert? I would die in that heat in the
It's
summer.
hot. It's hot. For me, it's normal because it's just what I've known. Here right now, today, it's like a low for March. My computer says it's 52 degrees outside, which is cold for us. So everybody else is probably like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. And I'm over here like shivering. So working in the desert is definitely difficult in the summertime. What I'm learning is kind of interesting, that some people in really, really cold climates, they literally take the winter off because the working conditions are just not conducive to being out in those temperatures. I'm surprised that hasn't happened in the Phoenix area yet, because it can get, up to 115 plus down in the valley in July here in Arizona. So it's really hot and the ground is really hard. So there's plenty of construction sites and other sites that we go out onto. If we have some major staking to do, I'm having to use a GAD for every single nail or hub or rebar or lat that I set. And it's hundreds and hundreds of them. So it's exhausting. It's hard. It's hot. But there are certain parts of the year that make it all worth it. I would say this time of year is one of them. Late in the fall, it's just absolutely beautiful here. That's something I've been kind of focusing on too, is just really taking in the scenery of where I'm at. I realize that some people look at it and just they're envious of it. It's absolutely beautiful here. So the conditions are really tough in the summer, but for the most of the year, they are beautiful and workable. And I probably wouldn't change it too much, although I do want to get licensed in Hawaii eventually. So there's that.
Yeah, a whole nother set of challenges.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, come with that. Yeah, I think that the resilience piece also comes into the climate and environment that a lot of surveyors face as well, regardless of your gender in the field.
Sure. Absolutely.
That. Great. I wanted to ask you if there is a particular mantra or inspiration or quote that you have that kind of helps you keep going, like in kind of those moments when you are having to be a little bit more courageous or get yourself like ready for a big task. Anything you want to share with us on that?
Sure. I don't have too many of these little sayings, but something that has stuck with me forever is, of course, something that my dad has taught me, and he has told me from the time I was really, really little that you are the captain of your own destiny. And so in times where I'm feeling very defeated or kind of beaten down, I just remember that I am ultimately the one in control of my circumstances, and I can either choose to find a way out of a bad situation, find a way to look at a brighter side of a situation, but ultimately that it's up to me to kind of choose to make the best out of wherever I'm at. And if that means, cutting certain friendships out or bringing new things in or trying something different, once you kind of, I guess, acknowledge that all of that is in your purview, it's all in your own control, that nobody can take what you really want from you, that's kind of freeing. And it definitely has made me feel like I can be a little bit more bold with some of my moves in life. So definitely you are the captain of your own destiny.
Absolutely. I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Farrah. I'm sure a lot of people will also really take that to heart. And on that note, given that, just to kind of wrap up, I wanted to ask you if you had any advice you would like to share beyond that, or any words of encouragement for kids, women, anyone who's looking at pursuing the surveying profession. What's your pitch?
Sure. My ultimate pitch is really just that the sky is kind of the limit. There's so much out there right now. Kids all the way from grade school up into high school, there's all this constant pressure of, what do you want to do with your life? How are you going to get there? Are you going to go to university? And it's I battled with the same thing myself well into my 20s. It's like, holy smokes, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just take the trades route? Am I supposed to go to school? And so I guess my biggest piece of advice would be to not kind of pigeonhole yourself into thinking that it's just one way or the other. So there's always an alternate route. If you start to take one and you decide it's not working for you, then switch to the next, and be resilient, believe in yourself, and then my biggest piece of advice whenever people ask me this is to find a really good mentor. So find somebody that you can really lean on, that you can ask all of your questions to, even if you might think that they're stupid. Find somebody that's really willing to sit and invest their time into you, and that will make all the difference. Just finding sound counsel, somebody to bat your ideas off of, somebody to tell you if you're wrong, somebody to affirm you if you're right, build you up more than tear you down. That's my biggest piece of advice. If you're thinking about getting into surveying, construction, engineering, any of those things, find somebody who has walked the walk for a long time and just kind of cling to them for dear life for your first few years.
Sound advice. Yeah, I agree with that as well. Mentors are just so important in helping everyone grow, and really like making sure that they push you also to realize your full potential also. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, Farrah, it's been so wonderful to chat with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us in your busy schedule. If anyone wants to follow Farrah, Landlady Survey on Instagram, as we've been discussing, great account, and keep up the great work, Farrah, and good luck with your studies.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie.
Thank you. Bye.